Hi and welcome to Program 17 in this series of tutorials and programs that focus on TradeStation EasyLanguage. If you're not part of our email list, then please go to markplex.com and I'll be happy to let you know when I release new tutorials or create new programs. Today's program, Program 17, calculates traders' pivots, and then, like some of the other programs in this series, it seeks to find confluences of where those levels have occurred on several occasions previously. And the way it does this is every time it calculates new traders' pivots, it compares the new values with all the values already stored in an 200 element array. If the new level is within a user-defined tolerance of a level that's already stored in the array, then we increase the thickness or the significance index of that line stored in the array. And then, having done that and analyzed the entire chart, we then draw these slightly thicker lines you can see here, although the thickness will increase depending on the significance index, and we draw those lines on the chart. And in this particular case, as we'll see in a moment, we've got a user setting so that we're only going to draw lines with a significance index that is greater or equal to a user-defined value. Then we extend those lines across the chart. As you can see here, we've got 3 lines showing on the chart at the moment. Now this program is similar to Program 2, but what I've done is made it so that it is now possible to have a start time for the period being analyzed one day and an end time for the next. And what I mean by that is if we go to markplex.com, I've included the formulae here, but each method calculates traders' pivots using these formulae, and we're using the high, low, close, or in the case of the woodie pivots, we're using high, low, and open to calculate the pivots. So high, low, close of what? Well, in this program we can define the period over which we're finding the high, low, and close. So for example, in this particular chart, I have decided to use a period that begins at 8:45 and ends at 15:15. I think I've got my computer set on Central Time at the moment. This is a continuous contract, so you could take the view that you'd like to use 24-hour, but what I did was in this particular case, just included volume on the chart as well, and I decided that, well, most of the volume is occurring during this time period, so I'm going to use this to calculate my high, low, close, open values depending on which calculation that we're using. Incidentally, with woodie, if you would be using the high and low from this period here, but then we'd be looking for the open on the next period beginning there. So as I say, it's similar to Program 2, only we can now have a start period one day and an end the next, which could be useful if you're looking at, say, 24-hour contracts. The other thing that I've done, because we're doing a lot of processing to go through the arrays and calculate these confluences, I've just included the levels, the pivot point, the resistance 1, resistance 2, support 1 and support 2. What I've also done, like Program 2, if I recall correctly, is made it so that we're only drawing the pivot lines after a certain user-defined date, just to try and reduce the processing that the program is doing. So I'm just going to remove the volume there. So you can find out, as always, more information at markplex.com. And another thing that I've done started doing recently is if you now click on one of the images, you'll get a larger version so you can see a little bit more clearly what's going on there. And this program runs on intraday charts, that's tick or minute charts, and will work on stocks, commodities, foreign exchange charts. And I've included an explanation of the user inputs, but I just wanted to go through that now briefly in this video. Just going to double click on that. So firstly, as I say, the start and end time, that determines the period over which we're calculating or we're finding the open, high, close, etc., depending on the pivot type. Pivot type 1 would be a classic pivot, 2 would be a woodie pivot, and 3 would be a camarilla pivot. Number of pivots. This determines how big the array is going to be. So a maximum of 200, but this is the array in which those levels are stored. As you recall, I just mentioned a few moments ago, if a level occurs at a similar level to a level already stored in the array, then we increase its significance index. Now I mentioned that the level had to be within a tolerance of the line already stored in the array, and the tolerance is determined here. In this case, I've set it at 0.25. We call it the combined value. Line sensitivity. For lines with a line sensitivity in the array greater or equal to this, they're the ones that we see on the chart with the white lines. Date to start. This determines when we start seeing the traders pivots plotted on the chart together with the little vertical lines that give you a visual indication of the period that you're looking at. And what I've done is just set this to be a date a few days back, just so that we're not unnecessarily drawing lines going way back on the chart, which can cause a lot of processing for the computer. Of course, we're still analyzing the chart going back, so this does not mean that we're only looking at traders pivots going back to this date in terms of calculating the confluence. This is just to do with presenting those traders pivots on the chart. The next several are all to do with colors of the various lines. Another thing that we do on the chart is we have the option of showing the high-low close from the previous session, and they're plotted on the chart if this is set to true. Decimal places. This determines the number of decimal places that we plot when we're plotting or rather drawing the pivot points, resistance and support levels. And then finally, test calc and output of inputs. These are just probably we'll just set these to false, but they give you some information about the calculation that the chart's performing. So if you wanted to run some checks yourself to make sure that the program was performing the calculations correctly, or you just want a printout of some of that information, then you would set these to true. An output of input that just prints out these inputs. So that is the program, and you can see I mentioned the high-low close. These are the lines here that reflect the previous session. So you can see when this little user-defined session is over here, then the red is corresponding to the high, the green is corresponding to the low, and then the cyan is the close of that session. So I hope you might find this program useful. It is available for download at markplex.com. Again, if you're not part of the email list, then please go to markplex.com and subscribe. And you can see his little box here. Just put in your email address and name, and I'll be happy to let you know when I create new tutorials or programs. Anyway, thank you very much.